Questions from the audience. Anyone want to come in? Ben, Hugh's only got phones. Fiona, yeah. If you just wouldn't mind introducing yourself before asking you a question and telling us if it's addressed to anyone in particular.
Okay. Fiona Brown from Hicks Baker, retail surveyor in Reading. One of my many concerns about retail at the moment is how we convey the story that we've heard here today, which all those of us who work in retail are very well aware of. How do we convey that to the planning authorities to halt a move that's been on for a number of years of increasing retail stock, either standalone retail schemes on the edges of town centres or in mixed-use schemes where they insist on an active frontage, as they call it, by having retail on the ground floor, which in fact you can't let and remains boarded up and is perhaps never let, so not terribly active. But I think there's a complete mismatch going on as to where the planning authorities think they should be with retail and the stock. And Aldershot is a fantastic example where they only last year granted consent for an 80,000 square foot Morrison's, 7 restaurants and a cinema, whilst you've got 100,000 square foot of the shopping centre sat completely vacant. So there's a complete mismatch between reality and what planners are doing.
You want to answer that, Mike? Where's one for you?
Localism. Hopefully, power to the people, the big society will get going, and local authorities need to listen. I mean, they've got their own issues at the moment. They're under severe capital constraints. We're talking to a number of them, see whether we can help them out, and they're really thinking about how they use their money wisely. They're tempted by all this, the offer of additional money through 106s from developers, but actually they've got to think about where they're really getting their money from, and people will not be able to afford to pay the empty rates. I mean, we've got a change of empty rates coming again in April this year. At the moment it's 0, and it's going to go up to I think it's 18,000. This is where it cuts off as 0, and now it's going to be 100%. And so that's a bit of another issue we have to face. I think it's just, it's got to be the local authorities listening to the people.
Mike, I know there's a lot of opposition to empty rates in the property industry. I know the BPF is very against it. I suppose supporters of the policy would say, well, it forces landlords to be a bit more realistic in their expectations rather than just holding out for a rent that was set years ago but actually can never be achieved again. But what's the argument against that?
It actually is hard to argue against it, if the truth be told, because it does make, it costs us more money. It's going to cost us an extra £100,000 this year. It does motivate people to do that. It's a fair point, but it just takes more money out of being able to reinvest in your different stock, and that's where it hurts. How can you give further incentives away?
Neil, do you find that mantra of active frontages and mixed use actually sometimes, well, it's well intentioned, it's applied so obsessively that the local authorities don't really look at where it's appropriate or where it's inappropriate?
Yeah, I mean, you tend to find on residential schemes that the ground floor will be commercial or particular retail. The issue you also get there is often that the retailer won't move in till the building is occupied. So you get that kind of issue of awful frontages, making it more difficult maybe on the residential side to sell or rent the property, and it's kind of who gives first.
Yeah, I was just going to try and answer Fiona's point, and without wanting to make something that might sound flippant, I think that using some of the statistics that we've seen here this morning from Local Data Company actually must help people trying to advocate their case locally to try and solve this problem of reality. And I thought it was very interesting. There was some coverage of the report on the BBC this morning, and they were in Rotherham. And the reporter was using the statistics that LDC had produced for Rotherham, and he was obliged to put a note at the end which said, of course, Rotherham Council dispute these figures. And of course, that's part of the blinkered approach that you're talking about, I think, Fiona, in the sense that we heard from Matthew earlier saying that local authorities are particularly perhaps concerned about the really right in the centre of the town centre. But Matthew's report is looking at the whole of the trading, the retail trading in that town. And that's really what the general public are concerned about, not just that main prime slot right in the centre of town.